All right. So these next two problems illustrate an ongoing debate among Democrats and Republicans. Republicans argue basically that if you cut taxes, you can sometimes increase revenues. All right? You cut the tax rate and revenues go up. And most Democrats would argue, no, if you cut taxes, you basically cut government revenues. And the reason it becomes important is because we've gone through 10 years of what we call the Bush tax cuts from 2001 to 2011. It's a little bit dated now. But what was illustrated there is that we cut the tax rates on high-income folks relatively large. And the question was, did that increase tax revenues? Did people work harder, et cetera, that actually created more economic activity, brought in more revenue for the government? Well, history shows it wasn't the case. You cut those taxes on all incomes, but especially at high incomes, and you didn't generate enough additional revenue to offset those taxes. So that debate is still going on, and it's a very important debate as we try to deal with our budget deficit. So this problem is going to illustrate pieces of that debate. So let's take a look at it, okay? It says, if the government changed the per unit tax from $5 to $2.50, then the price paid by buyers would be $7.50, the price received by sellers would be $5, and the quantity sold in the market would be 1.5 units. Compared to the original tax rate, this tax rate would. All right, so here it is. The original one, they're saying if we lowered the taxes to $2.50, such that the consumers paid $7.50, suppliers received $5, and the tax is $2.50. All right? And that goes back from the point here. The original point is that the tax was $5 between 9 and 4. That's our $5. There's the tax right there, $5. And the consumers were paying $9. The producers are receiving $4. The government got $5. So the question is, when the government cuts the tax from $5 to, in this case, $2.50, what happens? All right. So it says increase government revenues and increase the deadweight loss. So let's see what we're talking about here. So what are the government revenues when the tax is $5? Okay, $5 right here, and output is 1 unit. So government revenue is equal to tax times quantity. In our particular case, the tax was originally $5 times the equilibrium quantity, which is $1 right here, 1 unit. So the government revenue was $5. That's the original situation. Now the government goes and cuts the tax to $2.50. What happens? Okay, so let's look at government revenue. Government revenues, again, are equal to tax times Q, but now the tax is $2.50. But when you cut taxes, you increase equilibrium quantity. So it goes from 1 to 1.5. So there's the tax, $2.50, the difference between $5 received by suppliers, $7.50 paid by consumers. The government revenue is the $2.50 times the number of units sold, or in this market, 1.5. So I've got $2.50 times 1.5. Well, that's going to be equal to $3.75, or 3 million, or 3 billion, whatever it happens to be. But the point is, the government cut taxes and government revenues actually went down. Kind of like the Bush tax cuts, okay? So in many parts of these demand curves, if you cut taxes, you're not going to increase government revenues. All right, so let's go back to this question. The answer is increase government revenue and decrease the deadweight loss. No, government revenues definitely fell. But so what happened to the deadweight loss? The deadweight loss in the original tax is this triangle right here, right? There it is right there. The deadweight loss, the deadweight loss when the government cuts taxes to $2.50 is right here. So you definitely cut deadweight loss, and that's a good thing. So what's going to happen, our answer is really going to be, is that government revenues fell and the deadweight loss decreased. So you don't take as much money in, but you do cut deadweight loss, which is an important economic outcome. So the answer is going to be decrease government revenues and increase the deadweight loss? No. It's going to be decrease government revenues and decrease the deadweight loss in the tax. So when we go, again, one more time, from a $5 tax to a $2.50 tax, the deadweight loss falls. This little triangle is certainly smaller than this bigger triangle, but the government tax revenue fall as well. So revenues fall, but deadweight loss falls as well. All right? Good problem, good question. I like it a lot. Last problem in this sequence. Now we have the same situation. And instead of cutting the tax, we're going to increase the tax. Instead of cutting it by $2.50, we're going to increase it by $2.50. So here it goes. If the government changed the per unit tax from $5 to $7.50, then the price paid by buyers would be $10.50. There it is right there. And the price received by suppliers would be $3. There's our $7.50 tax, the difference between $10.50 and $3. We've got that there. All right. Now, compared to the original tax rate, this higher tax rate would. Here's the original from A to B, a tax of $5. Now we've got to figure out what's going to happen. Is it going to increase government revenues and increase the deadweight loss? Well, it's definitely going to increase the deadweight loss, okay? Because the deadweight loss when the tax is $5 is this triangle right here. And now the deadweight loss under this new, very large tax is quite substantial. It's this whole big triangle right here. So deadweight loss unambiguously increases. The question is, what happens to government revenues? It says here government revenues, increase government revenues. Well, let's figure that out. So the government revenues under this new tax of $7.50 is equal to the tax of $7.50 times the output, that means how much is being produced here, which is 0.5 units, 0.5. Well, that's going to be equal to 3.75 government revenue. Looks interesting, right? Looks pretty similar to what we had in this situation. But let's take a look. So what happened here is that the government has gone and increased the tax. Deadweight loss is definitely increased. The question is, what's happening to government revenues relative to the original situation? And the original situation is here, okay? In other words, the tax at $5 right there had a deadweight loss of this triangle right here, and a government revenue of $5 times 1, or $5 total, okay? Under this new higher tax rate, which has gone up by $2.50, the tax rate is now $7.50. The amount sold or consumed in this market is only 0.5. The revenues are 3.75. So when you increased taxes, you actually decreased revenue. And ironically, when we cut taxes, we actually decreased revenue as well. So what's the difference? The difference is this. When you cut taxes here, you cut the deadweight loss, even though you decreased revenues. And yet, when the tax is really outrageous, very, very large relative in this sense to the price of the market, you not only increased the deadweight loss, but you decreased revenues. So it was the worst of both worlds in that case. So the answer is actually C, decrease government revenue and increase the deadweight loss from the tax. Again, you had to make sure that you didn't get confused, as I've certainly been confused, when you compared that situation to this situation. What really happened is it wanted us to compare it to the original AB, not the situation right here. So at this AB situation, the tax of $5 government revenue is 5 times 1, or $5. So we go and increase the taxes from $5 to $7.50. Government revenue falls. Deadweight loss unambiguously increases. Moral of the story is there's a limit to how much you can tax. If you tax too much in the extreme, you'll wipe out consumption so much that revenues will go down, and unambiguously, deadweight loss has to increase. Conversely, if you cut taxes, what you do is that you also may decrease revenues, depending on where you are in this market. But in this example, we did decrease government revenues, right? Tax was $2.50, amount consumed in the market was 1.5. We got 3.75 in government revenues. But at the same time, you cut deadweight loss. So there is a benefit to cutting taxes, but you're going to pay a price in government revenues. When taxes are usually extreme, you get the worst of both worlds, which are a huge increase in deadweight loss, but in this case also a decrease in government revenues. So it's a nice problem, illustrates the kind of importance of taxation, and extreme taxation can cause real problems. Non-extreme taxation does not cause great difficulty. All right, we'll stop there. That's chapter 8. I'll come back and we'll do chapter 9.